Thank you for joining us in today's episode. I'm here with Simon. Please, Simon, introduce yourself to our lovely audience.
Thanks, Julia. I am Simon Rippon, Operations Director at Momenta. Momenta are part of the TCC group. That's the consulting consortium, which also includes Recordshaw, which is some market-leading reg tech solutions. But we'll focus mainly on Momenta and our service offering today, but part of a broader group, 26 years within recruitment and what I like to call people solutions. That includes about 17 years in the UK and 8 years here in Australia. We'll focus a bit more on some of that experience as we go through today.
So recruitment solutions, especially in the regulatory space and AML space, anti-money laundering space, and listening to my channel, I'm sure they are well aware of the anti-money laundering regulatory changes in Australia. Not only because that's what I'm talking about most of the time these days. So please tell us, what do you think are some good traits and characteristics that candidates should have if they want to move into the anti-money laundering space and anti-money laundering career, and this time where everybody is looking for candidates?
Yeah, I think that, there's probably a few elements within that, Julia. In terms of financial crime prevention, as I like to call it, and the broader AML space, my experience goes back to about 2008. When I started putting people into roles within that sector. That was in the UK. Interesting to note, some of those people who did their first foray into AML CTF as bright, keen, young grads entering the industry at that stage are today senior leaders, C-suite executives, partners in firms, etc. So it's been quite a journey. But I've seen the industry and the sector move and change a lot. And I think a key thing is around adaptability. So if you look at how technology, but even crime and how criminals have continued to evolve through those years, it continues to evolve. So I think a key characteristic for starters is to have what I would probably call an investigative mindset. Natural curiosity really, really helps. People who tend to look at something and go, does that make sense? Why? And want to know more. So that natural curiosity that some people have certainly is a key natural skill set. I'm not saying can't be developed, but certainly that is one thing. People who are analytical will certainly help. There is a lot of analysis in what is done. I think anything, if you look at sectors like the legal space, where the levels of communication, analysis, and ability to interpret is very, very helpful, but also be willing to learn, willing to adapt and to learn, because this sector doesn't stay the same. I've seen so many changes. They continue to change. Criminals keep on coming up with new ways to, whether it's launder money or commit crimes, and knowing that you're entering a sector which is going through growth, but will continue to grow because financial crime is not going away. So I would say those are probably the most important characteristics. I think also the ability to understand and interpret information, to look at that and apply that critical thinking, the analysis or analytical mindset, certainly will help you very much in a role.
What are the types of academic career or studies that you find your candidates have been through? For example, I come from political science and law, and I met lots of colleagues coming from business or accounting. I imagine these are the most common. Have you encountered some more niche or more unique universities that the candidates come from?
Another good question, Julia. There's a number of different industries and sectors, certainly from both legal backgrounds, but also the police, for example, have a real affinity with this sector. But I think it's interesting because we've seen a lot of people come into this sector who didn't actually have specific experience where you could say, look at a resume and say, yes, that is exactly what we're looking for. So, for example, in the past 5 years here in Australia, there've probably been more entrants into the financial crime sector in terms of roles than we've seen before. Many of those, depending on the size of the organization that we're hiring, would take anything from very experienced people or people with specific backgrounds, but also a number of organizations, given, for example, the training schemes they have in place, will put people who would probably technically be described as young, keen graduates with a good mindset, a good work ethic, ability to communicate well. And when I say communicate, both written and verbal, particularly in writing, there's a lot of writing, and having the ability to take a complex risk matter, for example, and put that in a way in writing where it can be easily understood is very important. So a lot of people have moved into these roles as well from other roles within a bank. So if somebody's looking to move into AML, CTF, don't be shy to take an entry-level position within a bank to establish yourself, to get a bit of a profile and reputation there, and then move into those roles. But I think also when applying for roles, do make sure that you adequately really highlight and bring to life your transferable skills. Think about what those skills are. I think a lot of people where they will think they have the skills for a role, and they will know their CV backwards, but not actually have read it very recently or very well. And I would encourage everybody to ensure that you think of the process that banks and other organizations, and we'll come on to how many more organizations are going to come into scope within AML2, but think about a number of organizations put on a different hat. Think of the person who's going to be looking at your resume or what they may be looking for. It could be a person who is just a recruiter that's recruiting across dozens of roles that doesn't actually have financial crime sector experience themselves. They're simply working to a job spec. So looking very carefully at what a job or a role spec says, but actually bringing to life any transferable skills that you may have, bring that to life for them. Recruiters, hiring managers, etc., tend to be very time poor. Just don't have a lot of time to read, analyze, understand, and interpret resumes. I hate to tell you this, but they're probably going to look at a resume for something like 10 to 30 seconds before they will make a really critical decision. So you make the links for them. You make note of the transferable skills will be absolutely critical at those early stages. And I think also be really honest with yourself. What is your foundational level of knowledge? And there are so many resources out there. If you need to grow, you're wanting to break into this sector, for example, you've got good skills transferable, but a lack of broader general industry knowledge. I would say there's many of them out there, but I'll highlight a few if I may. So, for example, Griffith University offer a number of micro-credentials, short courses. There is Macquarie University's Financial Integrity Hub. We've got a really good offering. There's, of course, ACAMS and their internationally recognized certifications and courses. And last but not least, AUSTRAC, the main industry regulator themselves. They offer a lot of learning courses, etc. And I recommend you go there. There'll be a lot of stuff, and never think you're going to stop learning.
And do you find that employers recognize those courses as valuable for an entry-level role for someone that maybe don't have hands-on experience, but if you can show that you have those courses, they find it a valuable plus?
Absolutely. If you're looking to break into a growing sector, if you don't have the relevant hands-on experience in a role, your ability to demonstrate that you've gone to do self-development to learn more about it will set you apart from other candidates who perhaps have a mindset of, I'm sure I could do this role. ones who have actually gone and invested time and effort into themselves to expand their personal service offering really will stand out a lot more to potential employers.
I will direct people to this episode from now on, because I get inquiry on my LinkedIn DMs of young people texting me and say, how do I get into an AML career? And I had an experience very similar to what you were mentioning. I finished university, and my employer of the time, they just liked that I finished the PhD. They thought it was interesting, and they just wanted to teach me. They didn't care that they didn't know about AML. They wanted to teach me everything. They liked my transferable skills, and they didn't care that they didn't know anything else. So when they ask me what course should I do, I have no idea. I don't know. So from now on, I'll direct everybody to this episode and say, listen to Simon. He knows what you should study. You were mentioning before how most sectors will be under scope, which will have a huge impact on the employment market, and with potential shortage of skills and shortage of workers that can be employed. How do you think this will affect the market, and what would you think the challenges of the AML space will be in this area?
A really interesting question, Julia. With the soon coming implementation of the AML CTF Act Tranche 2, or AML 2 as it's shortened to, it's going to have a big impact. The headline of that is there are going to be 100,000 more entities that will be regulated or come under regulatory requirements in the coming months. And that is going to impact any sector, no matter where it was or what it is, if that kind of activity was going to happen. So it's going to be an interesting change, because you've got the banks who already have the majority of the experienced AML CTF resources and staff. They're going to start competing against these newly regulated sectors, the real estate industry, accountants, insurance, etc. There's more, but what's going to be key there actually is, with those newly regulated entities, they're going to be looking for people who have a broad level of skills and experience within the sector. So actually, for people to be quite honest about themselves of where their current skill sets, knowledge, and maybe knowledge gaps maybe currently, will actually be a good indicator of their transferability into other sectors. So actually, you've got two sides to this, where the banks will no doubt see people departing from the banking sector into the newly regulated industries, where these are people who have 2, 5, 10 plus years experience, will move across sectors, and the banks will need to start backfilling, and they potentially will need to do some of that at a junior level, but it's going to create an interesting scenario at the mid senior level and above, for example. So for the banks, really needing to look at recognition and career pathways for individuals, to look not only at remuneration, which is always important, but actually to give people a sense of their role and identity and feel part of something. And knowing that there is a career pathway will help with retention. There's always going to be the people who move for opportunity to different sectors, but the AML market or sector will continue to change. As I sometimes say, the bad guys don't sleep. They are motivated by, and this is an oversimplification, but getting rich quick and staying out of jail. And they will continue to invent and come up with schemes, scams, ways to launder money, etc. And actually, as that develops, the newly regulated entities as well as the banks will continue to see these requirements grow. And whilst we talk about the people side, I couldn't not mention the AI and RegTech element. It's becoming increasingly important. But if you look at the estimate of what financial crime actually entails, it's something like conservatively estimated to be, and this is US dollars, 800 billion to $2 trillion. So that goes up every single year and has done for many, many years, will continue to do so. So the importance of both RegTech and AI solutions combined with the people who can oversee, who can review, who can be a set of eyes and add a common sense factor, for example, that not necessarily AI can do, is going to be really important.
Absolutely. And maybe with that, also with that AI might help filling some of those roles or bringing down some of that workload if there is not enough hands or human eyes or human hands to take care of that. As you were talking, I was wondering, are we already attracting, or do you see any trend of Australia attracting talents from abroad in this space?
Absolutely. We've seen it for some years already, and that is set to continue. Two primary markets I would call out at this stage is the UK. The UK has been under AML CTF regulations for a lot longer than Australia has. So the knowledge, skills, and experience that has been gained over many years there has been a valuable source of candidates for Australia. That also, let's be honest, Australia isn't a hard sell for people from the UK. Would you like a role in Australia? People have got their perceptions and ideas of Australia, and it's certainly an attractive country for people to be moving towards. Much closer to home, New Zealand, again, they've already implemented that legislation. They're going through a few challenges currently, and we're certainly seeing a lot of people with the experience, for example, of having been through the implementation of a Tranche 2 coming to these shores. But that said, there's a lot of different countries where people with good skills and experience that Australia would want and would need and will be a source of candidates long term into the future.
I don't know if this is beyond what might be your realm, but a problem with international or with migrant workers is always visas. Is it AML or this type of job something that fall under skilled work, or something that migrant worker can hope to get to be sponsored and to settle here for long term, you think?
Look, I'm not a visa specialist by any means, Julia, but from my perspective, we've certainly seen people who have come over, for example, on a different working visa, a short-term one, come into a role whether they can do 6 months, perhaps up to 12 months with the same organization if there's a change in location, where through visas like that gives people time to establish their credibility, to show the employer what they're capable of, and become invaluable to the extent that sponsorship may be offered. There are also organizations who specialize with assisting people through that process. So whilst there's currently not as far as I'm aware, a specialist financial crime category of visa, one may see that situation change in the future with the addition of 100,000 regulated entities coming in onto the radar very, very soon. So it's certainly something I would lobby for, and I think employers will be watching the space very, very carefully moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. It will be interesting, because if there is a shortage, that's what this type of visa, that's what they do, that's what they're there for. But interesting. And I'm sorry, I throw you a curveball. I know it's not part of what you do, but I was curious to know if you've seen cases, or if you heard about cases, and that's great to hear that there are options, or people coming here and finding solutions.
Yeah.
I think we're getting towards the end of this episode. Is there any last word of wisdom or advice that you want to give to the audience before we wrap up the episode?
Well, I'm not sure if I have any wisdom, but some advice I might provide. just for people to be honest with themselves, if wanting to move into the AML CTF sector, start off with why do you want to do that? What is it about it that interests you? What attracts you to that sector? What will you bring to that sector? And start that as your foundation of thinking of how you move into it, or even how you develop into it. Because if you start with the what's in it for me, you can have better focus on what you want to get out of something. I think alongside that, and the reason I say be honest with yourself is because as humans, we are the world's best liar to ourselves. If we want to justify something to ourselves, we'll find all the reasons in the world to do that. So honest soul searching, write things down, lists of strengths, weaknesses, what's in it for you. I think something else I have to speak about for things to do well in a role is to think about motivation. Motivation and what motivates you. I think over many, many years, and just for context, but probably myself and my teams, more than 10,000 people into roles. Of that, at least, and I'm saying conservatively, 2,500 of those are into financial crime prevention type roles. It is actually, if you look at motivation, many people flounder in their working lives because they never really think about motivation. And actually, if you ask them to think about it, they'll say, I'm not motivated because the role, my manager, this company doesn't motivate me. And actually, I would say if there's one bit of advice is don't leave your personal motivation in somebody else's hands. Because if you do, you're probably going to end up disappointed and will waste potentially years of your career. Once you understand what motivates you, what's in it for you, and how to motivate yourself, and then do it every day. Because motivation runs out. But if you do it one day at a time, everybody can motivate themselves for one day. You do it for one day, and you wake up tomorrow and you motivate yourself again. But understanding what that is critical. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest about it and use that as a focus, and it'd be absolute rock solid foundation for your future career.
That was very wise, way beyond AML and anti-financial crime and all of that. Thank you so much for being with us today, Simon.
Thanks, Julia.